Hi, Bo here from High Tech Investment, and welcome back to the channel where today we're going to put our PAMM account underneath the microscope. That actually means that we're going to give you a bit of insights as to what is going on with these particular PAMM accounts. How are we finding the settings? What settings are we actually using? Which one are we not? Why? How do we test them all together? That is what this video is all about here today. Even though you're not interested in our PAMM accounts, which we have discussed previously in one of our other videos that only came out here a couple of weeks ago, where we had a specific focus on the RSI Liberator part of the PAMM account in here. You can still very much use this, both for the RSI, also for the Wave Liberator versions in here, and try and structure the way that you are actually setting up your EAs, what it is important to look at. We're going to go through everything here today, so hopefully you will be a bit wiser on exactly how we are operating. Obviously, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to do it the same way. We are simply just giving you some insights as to how we actually operate, how we work in our little laboratory, having a look at the individual numbers underneath the microscope. And that is what this particular video here is all about today. So in recent news report here, we actually showed that we managed to get for the month here of June more than $24,000. This is actually divided into our two PAMM accounts. One is running the Wave Liberator and the other one the RSI. And we have gone through some changes, especially on the RSI. We are now doing the same thing also on the Wave Liberator version in order to optimize the profits, try to lower the drawdowns, and obviously create more profit overall, more and more safe also all the time. And that's where we think this particular video here comes in, where we can show you exactly how this actually works. So you also have an understanding of how the settings are coming into play. It is also some of the same settings that you will find in Expert Forex copy link service that we also provide. These are the same settings. We are not using one set for copy link and another one for PAMM. They are pretty much identical. Only the lot sizing is a bit different. So we're going to dig into this particular one and see exactly how we test. And you can see what is coming out of it at the other end. So let's get started. Let's get into it. So when you want to do the testing, we're doing it on MT4 platforms here. Obviously, it can take a bit longer time here again compared to MT5, but we prefer this particular one because we run a lot of different tests at the same time anyway. Basically, we set it up for the expert advisor. In this particular case, is the RSI Forex Liberator. So we set that one up. We have the symbol in here, Great British Pound Swiss francs, so that's fine. And then we have the model. We're actually going for every tick, so the most precise data that we can actually get our hands on. And we use also data. Normally we use it for about 12 months. We want to see if there's anything in particular in the market that is interesting to us. It could be that the currency part is trending. It could be that it's trading sideways. It could be there's some initial spikes that we want to try and cover to make sure the EA can also overcome this. So that's why we normally run around a year or 12 months. It could be extended up to 14, 15 months, depending on what is happening in the market. Otherwise, we are simply just continues to move the timeline so that we are always looking 1 year back. We have the most recent results. Trying to do this for 5 or 10 years simply doesn't pay off because the market has changed so many times during that period, and there's not one setting fits all in here. You constantly have to update them. You constantly have to double check if things are actually working out as they should be. Now we also use the tick data in here. So again, don't use the broker data. It's simply not accurate enough. What we want and what we have here is that we have to, again, get a specific program, add it here to the MT4 platform, and then you get 99.9% accuracy out of it. So this is the best that we can actually do, and we are using that particular one. We're also using a 15-minute time frame, and then we have set a regular spread, so not a variable one, but the spread will always be minimum 5, and that is what it's calculated at. That seems to give us the best overall starting point, so for this particular EA testing. And then obviously what you click is you click expert properties, and that's where we go in and have a look at the EA itself, what it looks like, and obviously how it can run. So the first program, it actually looks like this. It's quite big. Obviously, there is a whole lot of settings in here. So at first glance, it might look completely over and beyond what you actually want. But the whole idea here is that we're going to try and break it down for you here today in the individual parts and why we are testing it the way we do here. So the first part that we are looking at when we set up a new EA, we do a standard file, and that standard file could be, for example, that we set up a RSI period of 4 or 10, we do a price gap of 20, or if we're already trying a new currency and we have something similar on British pounds, then we will use that one as a starting point. Anyway, we're gonna start off, and we normally try and test off the first parts with the direction of trade, RSI period, and the RSI overbought or oversold level in here. So the options that you have on the EA is same trigger direction. So meaning basically the way it's moving is also the way we want to put in the direction of trade, or you can do it in reverse. So opposite of where things are moving. The RSI period in here, at the moment, again, this value here is actually what is set up in the EA at the moment. And when you are testing, what you want to look at is you want to look at your starting point, you want to look at your steps. And then if I just switch off my camera here for a moment, you will see also it comes out at the stop. So start, step, and stop. So again, same trigger direction. And then the other one is the reverse trigger direction. So if it's saying that it's going in a buy direction, then same trigger direction, that's what you want. You want to have a buy. If you put that particular one over here, that means that it's going to put in a sell when it gets a buy signal. And obviously sometimes it actually makes perfect sense in here, because as soon as you put the buy in, then the trend reverses, and then obviously you're in the right direction. But unfortunately, that's not always the case. RSI period, again, the start, we normally start at 2. We have steps of 2, and we also stop around 30. Most of the settings that we find here lies within that time frame. Now, the price levels, we are basically just running with a closed price. There's not really much of a difference for us in here. And then the important part is how does it start? And basically overbought, oversold. So you're starting at one end. So bought at 95, sold at 5. And then it goes all the way down to 51.49. And when you have 51.49, that means that you will have a lot of trades. It might not necessarily be the best selection. If you end up on the other side here with 95 to 5, that means you most probably will have very few trades at the end of the day here. So again, it is a balance, exactly how much you want to go in and change it. The next part that we then test once we get the results from that, and I'll show you exactly how we update that after we have done with the settings itself. We go on to the price gap. So again, we start at 10. We don't want to go below anything 10. Then we have a step of 2. And if I just switch off the camera again for a second, you'll see we go all the way up here to 50. And even some price gaps could be up to 60 again in here. It depends on what kind of currency pair. So if you have US Japanese, for example, you need a high volatility. So you go up to about 60 in here. That should be enough. Gap scaling, start level. So basically when we want to make an extension in the grid or reduction in the grid, then we're going to say, when are we going to start that? In here, we're saying, well, we want to test it without it. We want to test it in steps of 1, and then we do it all up until 5. We actually don't go any further. Normally, it's not necessary. It will, if it will hit the 5 many times, that pretty much means that you might have to extend the range you're testing in. And then the gap scaling rate in here, 100% is that you're keeping the same. If you go below 100%, that basically means that it's going to be more narrow. but we don't want it more narrow than 10 for sure. And that's actually the minimum get size we have here is just 10 as a precautionary measure. But it goes from 100% with the step of 2% up to 120. We don't really want it any higher than this. And there's a reason for that again, and that is because over time, percentage-wise, when it puts in 5, 8, or 10 grids, then the grids get extremely large. So you want to make sure that you are limiting them. Otherwise, it's going to be very difficult also, again, for the EA to actually recover on the price settings. So these are tested together again. So you mark up those three on the side. You do the optimization run, and then you test it again. The next part we're going to do here is then the top up lot multiplier. And again, we are actually starting here with 1. So it means that we're going to keep the lot size the same. You can see the lot for initial trade is 0.03 in here. So we're not changing that. We're not interested in the lot size at the moment. We are more interested in all the numbers. And if the drawdown is too big, we can always decrease the lot size later on, or we can increase it. That's not really a problem. We normally just start off with around 3 because that seems to be the best for us. If you go any further down, it will give you various results that is not always so precise. Lot multiplier from 1, and then we run in steps of 0.02 up to 1.2. We don't want to be too aggressive either. We know we can do it, and sometimes it makes perfect sense also for the EA because there's a lot more money. There's a bigger recovery phase in here. But again, it's all about the drawdown. So all about to make sure that the risk is manageable. Then top up trades to skip. So in here, at the moment, again, we go from 0 with a step of 1 up to 3. So that means sometimes if you have some currency pairs that have an extensive range, so on very, very quick, means that it's not going to put in the next grid step 1, 2, or 3 in here. So that means obviously you can reduce the drawdown. We are testing only up to maximum 3. There's no real point. Normally what we have, I think only one EA has about 2 that we skip. Everyone else has pretty much 0. So this is just a check to see exactly how the currency pairs is running. If it's still not too volatile, then you leave it at 0. And then we have initial take profits also here. You can obviously also do the hidden take profits. It doesn't really matter. We are just getting the numbers at the end of the day. We normally start with 10 and then step of 2 and then end up around 50. We don't want to go any higher than 50 normally. We want it to make sure it cashes in. So again, you can obviously play with the numbers, and if it really hits the number up here at one end or the lower end in here, then you can obviously try and see. But I wouldn't go much lower than 10 here either. So and again, this is actually in pips, it's not in dollars. The next part we then test once we have the results from that particular one. You are getting better and better results, hopefully, as it comes out, is the trailing start. And this is a secondary option for us. It's not one that we actually incorporate straight away. We disregard this particular one here. So because we want to have the right settings without any trailing stops first. Once we have the right settings, we can go in and test the trading just to see if we can fine tune anything, if we can pick up some extra profits and at the same time lower the drawdown. If we can't do that, which most of the times it will not happen, then we'll simply leave it off. And that's why you will also see that not many of the EAs have the trailing step. We start at 0 again to show here that, well, if all 3 is 0, that means basically there's no trailing stop. And then we go here for the start of the profit in steps of 2, all 3 of them. And then in this particular case here, because of the take profit is 24, we have just managed to set it up at 20, 20, and 10 in here. So these are the trailing stop loss. And the one at 10 in here is the trail stepping. So exactly every single time it moves, it will not follow it all the time. It has to move at least 10 and then it'll move once again. So not something, as we said, we use too much. Obviously, it's always nice to try and tweak your EA settings, but by the time you do that, most probably something else has to change too. The next part is the more important part, and this is one of the parts in here that is part of the testing phase. When you actually set it up in the first place, we decide early on, do we want to trade only one direction, or do we want, in this particular case it says only one or only one. In this particular case it could be both directions. So we normally make the decision before we did all the final testing or the starting of the testing, if we want to test in one direction or the other one. This is not something we put in the middle of the test, because those two results are so different. In this particular case, we have gone ahead, just tested the one, and then later on you can test also a second part, but then you start from the top again with both directions. The other part, the target profit with pip closure, standard actually when it comes from Expert Forex is 7, and most of the time that is pretty much spot on. We have a few times where it comes up to 8 or 9, and again you can also use it as an amount in here. We haven't done that because we are also using this, as I said, on the PAMM accounts, and obviously there, if we set it for $50 and that is the lot size 0.03, then you can imagine all of a sudden when we put those settings over on an account of $50,000 or $100,000, then everything has to change, everything has to match. And that's why we're actually keeping on the pips instead. Then you don't have to adjust any of this. The only part here is to change the lot sizing itself. Now, the last part that we have, and this is now the new part also for these particular EAs, is that once that everything else is running, what we then do, and I wouldn't recommend doing what we have, for example, here. This is a test that has already run. I would normally start the pruning at the trade counts. Here it says 7. This is because this is a final test. So this is actually settings that we have tested that works, that is actually already live. Normally you would set it up. So you have 0 here. You will have the balanced amount pruning, and then the gap pruning from scale of initial gap. Instead of the 120 that you see here, you'll have 100. So obviously make sure that you set this up for 0, balanced, and then 100%. So this is not active. And then once you actually are happy with the settings that you have done, then you can go, similar to the trailing stop, go and have a closer look and see, okay, can we improve on the profits, or can we reduce the drawdowns here? And it looks like we have found some settings. And again, we are testing between 0. So again, we can eliminate how it is without any of the pruning functions. Steps of 1, and then all the way up to 10 here. And then balanced amount pruning, we have the balanced amount and first and last. And we do not recommend the first and last. And we have seen already some people are using this, and then they don't understand why their accounts are taking some hits once in a while, because it's obviously taking one of the first ones that was set, which is in big minus, and then takes the last one, which only has a small profit. And that means that obviously every single time you will have this particular pruning, you will lose on that particular trade. So better to keep everything in 0 and try just to balance it out with the balanced pruning only. The last part is also the gap pruning in here. So for example, if our gap scaling rate up here is not 100, but is 102, 104, all the way up to 120 as we are testing out here. So if it's getting too big, as I mentioned here before, then you can go in and test, and we are testing from 100%, steps of 5, all the way up to 150%. And that again closes off some of the big gaps that we can have with these percentage increase when you have a lot of gap openings. And it will do that also here after the 7th one. It will go in and then try and balance this particular one out. For this test, we lost a bit of profit, but we gained certainly a drawdown that was a bit lower, and overall that was the best setting for us. So once you have done that, you can actually go over them once again to see if you can actually further improvement. So I'm now logged in to the server that I have this MT4 platform on. And in this particular case, again, it's the Great British Pounds, Swiss francs. This is actually a live account. It's already running. You can see the prices moving here. And it's also set up with the FX Blue publisher. In here, particular one, so we have RSI Forex Liberator. So exactly the same as I showed you before. Symbols with the Great British Pounds, Swiss francs, the modeling every tick. Also the data range that we want to test from 1st of July 2023 up until here recently, end of June. We have our tick data, we have the spread set, and then you have your expert properties that we have just gone through. And then normally you have the optimization. So when you are then clicking the start button down here, then obviously you now do all the testing, or actually the robot does the testing for you, all the different ones. As I said, you put them up, you test maximum 3 things at a time normally, because otherwise it'll simply take too long. Now what you then get is you get your optimization results over here. You can then go and highlight that. In this particular case here comes out profit 2,991, and most of the time people will go, hang on, I'm going to take this one, and then basically what you do is obviously right click on the mouse and you go set input parameters, and then you're going to start trading those particular ones off. Well, that's not how we do it, definitely not. You can see the total trade 640. You have a profit factor in here, obviously higher is better. Expected payoff, we're not really using that for much. We have the drawdowns, which is the most important thing for us, 871. And then we have the drawdown in percentage. The drawdown in percentage is actually not that accurate, because sometimes it happens that you get the drawdown in the beginning. So when you are just starting to trade it, when it's at, let's say, $10,000 account, then obviously a $5,000 would be 50% on that particular time. But if this particular one would have developed into 20,000, then the 5,000 no longer will be 50%, it will only be 25. So obviously there's a big difference in between that particular percentage. So sometimes it can vary. We are only looking at the dollar amount at the end of the day. That has something to do with the copy link service, that we want to make sure that most of the testing that we can do has a drawdown that lies somewhere around the 350 mark, preferably sometimes even lower. We try to balance it out exactly, also against the profits and the risks that are involved with that particular currency pair. Now, when we have all this data, it can be a bit overwhelming to have a look through. You have obviously an opportunity here to also indicated on drawdown, and if we scroll all the way down to the bottom, we'll see some zeros that actually didn't work out. And the bottom one we have here seems to be 2,732, and then it has 348 in drawdown. The one we are actually looking at the moment, as you can see here, is a pruning stat trades, a pruning approach, and then pruning scale, gap scale rate in here. But again, this is obviously very nice information. It can be very difficult to get a proper detail out of and an overview for it. So what we are doing is we are copying everything over to an Excel. Again, you right click on the mouse, you go copy all in here. And now we're going to take it onto the Excel, and I'll show you exactly how this is set up and done. So the data from the MT4 platform, you basically just copy paste as we saw here. So when you want to add it to the Excel, you go Control V, and then you get a whole bunch of numbers over here. So let's just straighten a few of the things out. We are only running these particular tests here. The rest of them is actually the ones that are already set up. We did the pruning start and the pruning approach in here. And then we have the pruning scaling start, and the pruning approach here, 0 is the balanced one, and 1 here is the first and last that we actually don't want to use. Again, you have the profit over here, the amount of trades, and then you have the drawdown in dollars, and then you have the drawdown in percentage. Now we want to have the best settings based on profit versus drawdown. So what we do is we basically just add in another column and then say, okay, we want the sum of the drawdown we have in here and divide it out on the profits. We get a percentage scale in here, and then we'll just run all those data in here. You'll get the percentage up. Let's mark this one. We'll click the data and then we'll sort them. And in this particular case, it's column I that we have in here. So now we have them a bit more organized. So basically this is supposed to be the best settings where it comes into profit versus drawdown. You can see the profit in here is not the highest, 27.36, but on the drawdown part, it's 3.49. So that already looks good. Now, obviously, we want to find the system in here, and this is where the sort of IQ test comes in. That is good if you like those kind of things. The first thing that I noticed straight away, that's an easy one here, is the pruning start trades is all at 7 in here. So let's try and just mark this one up in yellow. And you can see the percentage are very, very similar, so not much here. The next part that comes into mind is that the next one is actually 8. So these are some of the best numbers. And then we can see from here on, I'm going to start off with a bit of mix of 10. You have some with 0. Don't forget the 0 ones is if you don't do anything. So this was before the test, we would have had that number and that drawdown 361. So without any type of pruning at all, that would where we would be. So, and then the percentage will go up as we go down. You can see that even here, for example, again, you'll find that there's a lot of 6s in here. So that seems to be very, very stable results. But we're going to focus on the top part up here. In the first part, because we have 7, we have 8, we have obviously 0, and even 9 and 10 also looks to be okay. Now we actually don't want the pruning approach 1, which is the first and last. So let's just mark those up just to see which ones we actually don't want to have in here, to make life a bit easier. So again, it helps at least me with the colors on how to operate this and how to quickly have a closer look at what is actually working, which ones of the different settings are the ones that are popping out to you. Now, this is not the most difficult one, obviously, to have a look at. So again, here, don't forget we started off. So pruning gap scale start. So that was actually this one. And then we have a look at saying, okay, 100 is here. We have 105, 110, 115 is down here. 120 is the best one that we have up here, 125. And then it's going down again from 100 and where do we have? 130 is down here. And then 135 and 100 and where do we have? 140 in here. So 145 and then 150 at the end. So all of them in this particular case is very, very similar. And we want to be somewhere in the middle because we want to make sure that it works not just for one particular setting that looks out to be the better one. So basically we say, okay, this is the setting that we want. It is pretty much in between the 100 and the 150 that we are looking for. So we might want to go here, and you can see even the difference in between it. It has about, I can see 30, 36, 27, 36. Here the profit is slightly lower, so you're losing about $4. It doesn't matter, it's small stuff. And then the drawdown is also slightly lower here. You can see also there's not big of a difference in the pruning approach in here for that particular one. We just don't really like this one at the moment. So you want to make sure that you are somewhere in the middle and you have something that is actually working. If we were missing, let's say, some of the 150, 145s, even down to, let's say, 130, we might actually say, okay, let's go for 115 instead, or even 110. So you want to balance it out to find the one that are sort of kind of in the middle. So if the market changes slightly, these settings will still work over time. So basically you take the settings in here, and in our particular case, we say, okay, let's mark this one up. We're going to go with 96. The next part we then do is obviously we want to run this particular one again, just to see exactly what are the numbers that are coming out of it. So we jump back over to our server. Back on our server, we simply find 96 in here. So that's the one we want. We right click again. We do the set input parameters. It'll obviously jump back to this particular screen in here. And then you can look at expert properties down here. We said start pruning. It's now set at 7. It's balanced amount. It's 120. That's actually what we wanted. And then we're going to run a test. So make sure the optimization is not on. If you did that particular insert correct, that would go away. And you then start the test itself for that particular period again. And then we'll see if the results that we actually had doing the previous back testing, where we're testing a lot of different settings, if that actually also comes out as a result at the end. So with the test complete, it is time to have a look. First, we'll have a look at the graph. And obviously it's a beautiful graph in here. We can see there's a couple of drawdowns. First one here, second, third one, and then we have 3 recent ones in here. They don't look too bad. Good part also up here is that we're using the every tick, and you can see the 99.9% up here. That is what you want to see to make sure that this is a good and valid results. And we want to go and see the report. We have the initial deposits of the $10,000 that we are testing. We can see that the net profit looks pretty okay, 2,738. So this is basically what we were shown before. That's great. We also have a total trades of about 611. So that's a very good number. It means that we are not too conservative in here. And then we have the maximum drawdown, which is the important one for us, 349. So that's within the range that we want to have it, 2.83%. So quite nice and low. And then here you can also see short positions 72%, long positions is 68, and then profitable trades overall is 70%. So those look pretty good numbers here. Don't forget that anything above 60% is definitely very good results if you can get that. 70 is even better, but again, this is still back testing. This is not real life testing. What we have to do now is basically start testing these particular ones on the live demo accounts, and that particular setting that you see here is already running on that chart up here also. So I just want to show you a couple of other examples on how we are actually looking at the individual data that we are getting out from the optimization results. So here's an example of another one. So here we are testing trade directions. So either with the trend or against the trend. We have the RSI period in here. And then also we have the overbought, oversold levels. And again, what we are looking at is doing that IQ test. What is it that falls into place? Well, first of all, it looks like the first many ones in here. Don't forget, this is the drawdown, $400, 392. That's a bit high, but it is still within the range, even for a $1,000 account. You have all the trade directions is 1 in here, and then you have the RSI period. So definitely these are good ones. So these we definitely want to have a look at. There's also a couple of other ones in here. But the first part we want to have a look at is fine. The next one that actually comes into mind is not so much the RSI period at first. It is actually the overbought, oversold level. In here you have a lot of 7s and 6s all the way through. You also have a 6 down here. So let's try and just separate those again with individual colors and see what actually comes out of this. That didn't go. So let's try this one again. And we also have one down here. And then we saw trade direction. There's another one. So let's highlight that. And there's another 6 down here. And we don't really see any other 7s. And if we have a look at the drawdown, so this is again is the drawdown part, starts off at 10% up to 29. And you can also see The dollar amounts is getting too high, definitely. We are not so interested in the profits at the moment. But what is coming out of this now is trade direction is the same on the yellow one over here. And then overbought, oversold. So that's good. We have 14, we have 16. Don't forget, we are testing in steps of 2, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, 28, and 30. So very stable results here. And all of them are coming out with 2,000 or 3,000 in here, and also have a very low drawdown. So the first part would obviously, we can go for this particular one here. We wouldn't do that. What we most probably would do is we'll take 1 or 2 steps down at least, and then go, okay, if we want to use the level here of 7, then we would do an RSI period of 18, so a bit away from the edges. Might not be all the way up here, but you can also do 20. There's nothing wrong with that. You can see profits is almost the same, drawdown is almost the same. So if you want to try and squeeze something out, maybe that is the one. Also, if you have a look at 6, saying, okay, 6 is close to 7, so that's good. And here we have RSI period 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, and 20. So if you want to go with that particular one instead, you might want to go down here. You can, however, see that the price is actually, we lost a bit of the profit in here. Drawdown is still okay, so that's why the percentage is up. I still didn't want to go with this particular one. So if you go, or you want to go with 6 instead in here, then most probably 192 would be the one to go. As I said, both of these here will work, and not necessarily always take the first one, because again, you can see that either 10 or 12 is not here. And that obviously means that if you take this one and the market changes just slightly, then you might be out of whack, and the EA might not make you any money. You could even lose something. Highly unlikely if you set this particular one up in the right way. But these are ones that you can very quickly figure out exactly how this operates. So let's just grab another one and see if you grab the picture. So the next one I have for you here, we are testing the gap size, we are testing the gap scaling start, and we're also testing the gap scaling rate that we have in here. And then we have to find the common denominators again, which ones are the ones. Now, first ones I look at is gap. So obviously in here, there's a range that there's a lot of gap with 24. There's another one in here. There's another one also here, obviously, and there is 2 there. So it looks like a lot of the best ratings that we have. We also have some 14s in here. Let's just finalize the 24, because 14 obviously is a bit on the low side. So, and then see what is actually coming out of this particular one here. So even though they are not all the same, so there's another one. You can see some other variations. So 24, 14, and now we're starting to get 16, even 44. And again, it's not really those individual ones that we are looking for. We are looking for a pattern instead. Now we're done with the gap sizing for the 24. We look at the gap start, and obviously here we can see that there's a difference also. So let's mark those up and say, okay, the orange one we give them in here is on the 2. We have one with 3, but let's finalize this particular one here. So you can see the thing starts to basically stand out, and it'll provide you with a better solution of which ones are the stable results, which ones are not. So that was all the 2s. Let's go to, let's give that a green one. So, and here, so gap scaling starts, all the ones that goes with 3. And again, we figure out and have a look how stable they are. So now obviously some of these ones here is quite high on the drawdown down here. So it might not be a good option for the gap scaling 3, which only leaves about 3 up here. So let's try and focus on the other one. So gap scaling start 1. what we have here, 116 seems to be the best one. What do we have? We have 118, 120, so that's good. And then we have a closer look. Also here we have 114, so that's good. And where do we have the next one? We have 110, 18 is also in here. So the question is again, which ones are they? We have a look at both the profits and we also have a look at the drawdowns. In this particular case here, the gap scaling rate, normally we want to try and get it as low as possible, that we absolutely can in that particular case here. So either it'll go down to 108, 110, and obviously we go all the way up to 120. Again, try and get within the program here. So I don't want to put into 120. I don't want to put it in 118. It might be in this particular case here, the best one we actually get out could be this one here. So 116, we can see that even if the market changes, there's 114 down here. There's 110, 108. I don't know why our 112 is at the moment. And then if we have a look at the orange section instead, so this is the gap scaling 2, see if that is an option. Again, I see 110, 112, 114, 16, 18, and 20. And again, a lot of people might want to take this particular one in here, which might be okay. If we test it, it might be even a better one, as we said, where we can get a lower drawdown, but then the recovery will also be a longer one because the grid steps will be bigger. We don't really like that too much. So it means that most probably we will have to go down to either 116, or in this particular case here, we can go to 114 because we still have 112, 110. So it is again up to you which one you want to take. Obviously, the drawdown for this particular one here is a lot lower. So, but the rate is slightly higher, but almost the same. Definitely there's about $50 lower in drawdown overall, and percentage wise, it certainly looks better. So most probably we would go for this particular one. So it's easy to see there's a system in here. It's not just an individual number that you have that actually makes up the best setting. You can see some are better, some are worse, and then you try and aim somewhere in the middle where you can be pretty safe that all the other ones around you is also working. So even if the market moves a bit, you are still okay. So I hope that this has given you a very good insight as to how we actually operate, how it is that we are testing, what it is we are testing. And once you have done the initial parts, you can actually do it again, see if you're getting even better results. But the idea here is not to necessarily go for the best part or the top part that gives you the most profit. You have to have a look in the system itself to see, okay, these settings, are these the only ones that actually worked in the last year? Or do you have a settings which is pretty much similar or just small adjustments in between that is also there? When you find these items and these you have to look for, you get more stable results over time, because there's no need to run around and think that you can find last week lotto numbers, because obviously, again, as you know, they're not really worth anything. But if you can go for the ones that you can see is coming again and again, so that means that you have a lot of different settings that will work in the different environments. And that's why you have to update them. This is not set and forget. So you have to run the tests from time to time when you can see there's changes in the markets, or when you see that the EA is not really taking very good to the settings themselves, then go back, have a look, reevaluate if this is actually the right settings that you should have, or should you have taken the other ones instead. And then you try them out again for a couple of weeks or a month at a time, and then see if it's running. If it's running nicely, don't really touch anything in here. That is basically what we are doing. But it is a lot of work trying to set these particular EAs up. There's no doubt about it. But I hope this has given you a good insight to as how we are doing it. So also, as I said, if you are already part of the copy link service and you're using some of our signals, then at least you know what it is we are trying to do here in order to get the best settings overall. It is not the highest profits and gains that we are into. We are into making sure that we have good stable settings over time. We have a bit of a different setup, or I have, when I go through these, similar to what I just showed you here. My background is in aircraft engineering, and that is not really, I haven't been a trader for more than 5 or 6 years here now. So this is something that I took up for my pension, for just a bit of a joy and some extra money. Obviously, it has developed into a complete passion, and also this particular YouTube channel here now. But I am not, as I said, a professional trader for the last 30 or 40 years that have a feel similar to, for example, the developer of Expert Forex, Alex in there. He has been through a lot of different types of markets. He has maybe a better feel for the EAs than we do. He certainly also developed them, but we are into data. So that means I look at the data, I look at the confirmations, and then I run the test to see if this is actually true. And that is my background. It's obviously hard to let go. It is certainly a different way of doing it, but as you have seen in the last many years, and the people that are using both the PAMM accounts and also the copy link service, people are making money off these signals in here, and that's the most important thing. So I hope that you learned something from it. I'll be happy also to see some of your comments and remarks, so please put them in there. And don't forget, this is still your own risk. It is your investment. It is your trading. So you and you alone are responsible for your own type of trading. We are simply just trying to give you some insights which you won't find anywhere else, I believe, in the YouTube markets. Very few YouTubers will actually show how it is done. It is not an easy process, and obviously you need some extra tools apart from what you get on the MT4 or MT5 platform when you are testing, and you need to be quite resistant in having a look at these data and then try to analyze them the best way possible. I really hope I've given you some insights to this. So until then, I hope I'll see you on one of my next videos. Bye bye.